One of the surprise celebrity spots of week 2 of pre-season Formula 1 testing in Barcelona has been the return of Fernando Alonso. He waltzed into the paddock on day 1, signed some autographs, said hello to his former McLaren teammates, and subsequently McLaren have announced that he will now take on an ambassadorial role for the team and test their 2019 Formula 1 car at some point this year. Scott Mitchell, our F1 reporter, you went and spoke to Fernando and team boss Zak Brown, discussing his return, if you like, to F1. Why can Alonso simply not stay away from this sport?
Yeah, I mean, you know, what's the famous line? Don't call it a comeback. But yeah, it's a comeback of sorts, isn't it? Because we sort of thought for a while that Alonso would be behind the wheel of the McLaren at some point. We still don't know exactly when. There are going to be 2 days of testing during the season that he could drive, or maybe could participate in some Pirelli tyre work or something like that. But
yes,
it's going to be meaningful. It's not going to be insignificant. Throw him out for a few laps to get like a commercial benefit or anything like that. They've talked about it.
They want him to help develop the car, don't they? And next year's car as well.
Exactly. So it's developing the MCL 34 for this year and the MCL 35 for 2020. So it is significant. It is confirmation of what we kind of all thought was possible and going to happen. But yeah, I think a few people maybe hoped that they'd see him in pre-season testing. But as Alonso said, he'd probably feel bad taking away vital track time from their full-time drivers.
What do you make of Alonso's mindset in all of this? I mean, we've seen ambassadorial roles bandied around before in Formula 1. They tend not to mean a lot. As you say, this suggests something a bit more serious. Alonso's described McLaren as his spiritual home. Do you sense he may be regretting not being in Formula 1 full time?
He says that he doesn't miss pre-season testing, which maybe doesn't surprise me. Maybe he might have just didn't miss speaking to us. When he said goodbye to us in Abu Dhabi, maybe he thought, I'm not going to have to see these people for a while, and then 3 months later he's back at it.
I miss you guys.
Exactly. I think it's quite serious because we know that Alonso has been leaving the door open to a possible F1 return. Even though Abu Dhabi last year was treated as his grand farewell, lots of big goodbye messages, it did seem like the very last time.
He never said he retired.
No, exactly. So, well, he did sometimes. It was weird. The vocabulary did change when it suited them. But I think the main thing is that he has always said that should the circumstances conspire that it would be right for him to come back into F1, he would want that. And he also points out that he wants to be ready for that. He can't just be sitting at home on the sofa, sort of get towards the end of the season and go, maybe actually 2020 I fancy it, and McLaren go, oh yeah, actually maybe we fancy bringing him back. If he's done nothing for a year, then he'll have slipped, and he feels at the peak of his powers. He's, you know, with the help of his teammates, he's won the Daytona 24 hours and Le Mans 24 hours in the last sort of 7 or 8 months. So it's not like his powers have waned. He's going to do the Indianapolis 500 again, try and win that. He's got to try and clinch the WEC title as well with Toyota in LMP1, and just getting on track in an F1 car. Even though he doesn't say it's absolutely essential to his F1 comeback, if it happens, it is obviously going to keep him in that right frame of mind and give him a good reference point for it.
And beyond the extra feedback, obviously, that McLaren are hoping to get from such an experienced driver, what do the team want from Alonso in this role? You spoke to Zak Brown as well, so what's he hoping to see from his charge beyond, you know, confirmation of the car's weaknesses or strengths?
Well, he's obviously an excellent reference point for them, not just because of his experience, not just because he's a 2-time world champion and a winner of I think 34 Grand Prix or something like that. It's because the MCL 34 was born in summer last year. Alonso was a major part of trying to work out what the hell is wrong with our 2018 car and how do we make sure that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. So I think Alonso's feedback, because Lando Norris did drive that car and Sainz got in it at the end of the year in an Abu Dhabi test, but there's a massive difference between someone who has 2 or 3 days of experience in your car driving your new one and saying, oh, well, this is better, this is worse, and the person who was like, no, this is bad, this needs to be fixed, this is where you need to target. He also knows the ins and outs of the processes at McLaren as well, not just sort of what the output was. So I think it's going to be really valuable for McLaren to actually have a proper reference point, not just for where the car is now, but also the progress that McLaren have made to get it to this point.
And how do you think the regular drivers, Carlos Sainz Jr., Lando Norris, what will they make of having Alonso kind of coming into their territory? Alonso's mentioned that, you know, he sees mentoring younger drivers as something he's passionate about. I think McLaren also wants him to do the same with the engineers, such as his experience and ability. But how would you feel if you're Sainz or Norris, having this guy kind of lurking in the background and refusing to go away, so to speak?
I'd have been relieved that he didn't turn up for pre-season testing in any more than just sort of hanging around in the second week.
Celebrity capacity.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I'd have lost any of my valuable 4 days of testing, it would have been a bigger problem. I think they have to realise that ultimately either of them have only got this opportunity because Fernando has decided to step away. He was a 2-time world champion who last year kept saying he was at the peak of his powers. So I think they do accept that he is a driver of vastly more experience, and he is a driver who has something tangible to bring to the team and to them as well. So I think giving up a day, maybe 2 days, however it ends up being, giving up something on track for them is a setback of sorts, but it'll probably be something where they think the net gain is going to be higher. And while it might be difficult to sort of persevere and concentrate when you've got all of these, is Alonso going to come back in 2020? It's like, well, hang on a second. Carlos and Lando must be thinking, well, which one of us is going to go? I've got a 2-year contract, or I've got this, or that, or the other. You know, it becomes slightly more complicated there. But I think everyone's sort of focusing on the bigger picture. Alonso's not exactly expressly said, yes, I'm coming back in 2020. So I guess if you're those drivers, McLaren have given you this opportunity, and Alonso is a guy who is willing to sort of impart with some of his wisdom to benefit you. You think you have to take that at face value and say, right, how can I make this work for me, and not try and sort of work yourself up into a worst case scenario where you make yourself think that a scenario is developing that maybe isn't.